Let's talk about sadness and how it's a good friend, but we often run away from it. So most of us will do almost anything to never feel sad. And it's almost religious the way that we run away from it, the way that we deny it, especially in Nigeria. The person feel almost sad, God forbid join. It's now why they feel religious because there is this it's almost as though we hate the feeling of feeling sad. We don't want they associated with them in any way. But I don't think that's how our relationship with sadness should look. I think sadness is a very helpful emotion for learning, for growth. It's very useful. And the times that we are sad is a very, very good time for grounding. You get, and the view where we they express in that rejection, or rather that denial of what with the experience of what with the go through. It's very fear based, and I think we need to revisit them. So for starters, sitting with sadness and sitting with that terrible experience, it doesn't make our life terrible. It doesn't make our life more gloomy. Doesn't make it sad. Feels like that is what we are subconsciously running away from. That is why we deny it with so much intensity because we don't want to be associated with it in any way. But I think it's too fearful and it's unrealistic. Realist. But I do think it's unrealistic. None of this. I dey try not to describe myself as realist. I don't know, maybe because different realities they happen to everybody every day, and what's which one can be the realities that we still be realists, you know, on which person's reality are we defining what is real and what is not. But that's another issue. I digress. So I don't think it makes our life worse off. I think it's actually helpful. We become better people when we sit with our terrible experiences and we sort of process the experience, sit through the sadness, walk through it, come out on the other side a better person, someone who has a much fuller understanding of the issue where they just experience. And so, if you were to meet someone tomorrow after your own experience, you have some perspective to share. And in some case, the way that you can contribute to that person who is going through something that you've gone through sometimes is to sit down and keep quiet and just let them go through it. This one is difficult, especially for people that we care a lot about. But sometimes the best thing that you can do for them in that situation is to allow them to go through it. Stay close in case they ask for questions, in case they ask for guidance or they ask you questions about it. So you stay close, but you allow them to experience it and potentially come up with their own perspective, just like you did, and then come up with their own solutions for it, just like you did, their own resolutions for it, just like you did. Sometimes that is the best gift you can give to someone who is struggling. Now, talking a bit about the downside of sitting with sadness, I think what we subconsciously run away from is the possibility of becoming this person who gets completely shattered by that experience if you sit in it for too long. The possibility of us degrading into self destructive behaviors. It manifests in a lot of different ways. Some people, they were just, they cause themselves, they inflict physical harm on themselves because it's almost as though that's the only way they can feel. Their experiences don't break them so much, they don't even feel anything anymore. So it's like this is the closest thing that they can get to feeling. So they just do it. And I think getting to that point is sort of what scares us from sadness, from engaging with it in any way at all. But I think that if you engage with your sadness and it results in that, it's most likely because there was not a lot of intention going into it. So when I speak about this and when I do it in my own life, when I revisit my difficult experiences, it's very intentional. I'm very obsessive about growing. So I evaluate everything that I experience. All of my experiences are evaluated, documented, journaled. And so when I move back into that experience, when I engage with that pain, that sadness, I'm going into it asking myself, what is the lesson that this one has brought for me this time? Because there is always a lesson. Everything that has come to you, everything that has happened to you, has happened for not just a reason, but it has happened to deliver a very profound lesson to you. So I go back into those issues, into those experiences, asking myself, what is the lesson that this one has brought for me this time? And that's what I'm looking for. And I think if we go into those experiences with that intention, with that desire for learning, to sieve out the lesson from it and then leave it. Because once you sieve out the lesson, what you hold on to moving forward is the lesson, right? Whatever resolution you come up with, that is what you are holding on to. The next time you think about that issue, you are not dwelling on the pain. You are dwelling on the growth that you've extracted from the situation. That's the memory you have now. Yes, the other memory is there, but this is the new memory that you've created from this experience. And whenever you think about this issue, this is, one of the things that pop up. And of all the things that pop up, this lesson is the one that you are holding on to. The next time you're in a similar situation or you have a similar experience, that lesson becomes the guide with which you navigate that issue. So I understand the fear with not wanting to engage with sadness, but it's a necessity, especially as adults. You're not just engaging with a lot of people, you're not just interacting with a lot of people. You're also going. I mean, those of us who are lucky in this time and age to have families, to have children, right? You're also becoming responsible for people. So you should know how to navigate your emotions. You should have a very solid bearing inside of yourself if you are going to be one interacting with other people and then being responsible for other people. I think it's very important, you know, escaping it and trying to live in sort of a fantasy world that you've created for yourself. I think that's very expensive. I think that is what is very expensive. I think it's a luxury that only children can afford. Can afford because I mean they are kids, not a lot of responsibilities. Until they grow up, they don't owe anyone anything. They're just there existing. So they can afford to not do any work in that regard. But as adults, the way that you treat people influence their perception of the world, influence the way they see the world, right? If they go out of their house and they get treated terribly by all the people they meet that day, then by the time they get home and someone asks them, how was your day? They will have nothing nice to say. If an alien comes and it's like, yo, what's your experience of this world? They have nothing nice to say if that's, continues being their experience. But if more people treat them with kindness, then their perception of the world becomes, oh, life is good. The world is a beautiful place. And I feel that is a responsibility that each one of us owe, not just to ourselves and not just to each other, but, you know, the world in general. Now, life in itself is tough. The world as it is today is a pretty difficult place to be in. So I'm not saying any of this to say people's experiences are negligible or the pain that they experience is negligible. No, I'm saying regardless of the difficulty, despite how difficult those experiences are, I'm saying this is the best line of action regardless. I'm saying this is the best thing that we can do for ourselves individually. Even if you are thinking as a cynic, I'm saying this is the best thing you can do for yourself long term. And then if we are thinking as a community, this is the best line of action that we can take for each other. Acceptance is necessary because there is no change that has ever been created by lying to oneself. Short-term change, yes, but not sustainable change. If it's going to be sustainable, if it's going to be long-term and fulfilling, it must be honest. So acceptance is necessary before you can bring yourself to do the necessary work. Because if you feel like you're already perfect the way you are, then you don't have to work on yourself. Everything is good as it is. Nothing needs to be worked on. I don't think that's always true. Doing the work, sitting with the sadness and processing all that pain. By the time you're done with the work and you show up, you come out the other side of it, of the process, you become a much better person, but not just better. You are a lot more integrated. By the time you come out of the other side, you are a lot more integrated as a person. And I think that's something that we should strive for as people. Now, when I talk about sadness, lastly, before I go, I like to cite the movie Inside Out. It's a movie about a young girl and her emotions. There's two parts to it. There's a part one, there's a part two. In the part one, she was very young, and the leading emotion in her head then was joy. And anytime sadness would try to go to the console to touch the console, when they get sad or when she needs to be sad, joy and the other emotions will pull sadness away from the console. But by the part two of the movie, joy started to understand the role that sadness has or had to play in the girl's life. There were times where she's had like difficult experiences, issues with friends, family, her baseball, is it baseball or is it ice hockey that they play, so sort of her involvements in school. She was having all these different issues and she was reacting terribly to these issues in real time. It wasn't until sadness touched the console that she just will say breakdown, but it was helpful. When sadness touched the console, it was as though there was this big well that had been collecting water and someone just broke the side of the well. That's how it felt. She just started crying. She was crying and she was sort of going through all the different experiences playing in her head. And with that came not just a release, with it came clarity, with it came grounding and the integration that I spoke of earlier, coming out of that sad experience of her breaking down in that way. You could tell that she wasn't just more grounded, but she was a bit more mature. There was a bit more maturity to the way that she showed up in the world after every time that she experienced sadness, that she went through it and came out of it. There was a bit more character development that happened, and you could just see it in the way that she showed up after the fact. I think it's very important. I think we should not run away from it. And like I said in the beginning, I think it's a friend, very dependable ally that we should revisit our relationship with, reconsider the way we interact with it and use it for the purpose it was created. My name is Osas, and I'll see you in the next video.